Good morning. I'm really hoping that I don't have the technical issues that I had this time around. But good morning and welcome back to another Mekis Matters. It's Tuesday, a day for tacos, a day for throwbacks, a day for tea. But actually, I'm just drinking coffee. That's the hot drink of the day, as it usually is. And fun fact, you know, many people with ADHD, coffee is not actually an upper for them. It's a downer, so it kind of levels them out. And this is what I realized it does for me. Like it kind of mellows out my brain so I can focus. Whereas for some people, it turns them into Hammy the Hamster from Over the Hedge. And if you've never seen that animated movie, you've missed out on a classic. So that's the hot drink of the day. Coffee. It's regular instant coffee. I haven't done my orders yet, guys. Um, and the hot take, I'm gonna maintain last week's hot take, rolling into this week, which is that geopolitics and politics as a whole are gonna do you every day. So you should pay attention. You should be concerned. You should do your research and figure out, how what happens elsewhere eventually has an impact on us right here on these 37 square miles. And with that, I want to say that I wish, I don't know, much strength, safety, and guidance, I guess, to those in Iran, in Palestine, Sudan, and the Congo, as we continue to see these conflicts just randomly start. I think most of us went to bed, did not expect to wake up to what we did over the weekend. I urge everyone to remain updated, remain outspoken, and be aware of how this will eventually trickle down and have an impact on us here on Samat, whether directly or whether indirectly through the impact it has on Europe, which includes the Netherlands, a kingdom of which we are a part of. So just to put that on everyone's radar and maintain that that's going to be the hot take, I think, for pretty much the rest of the year. Um, no one's messaged me and said a dang on a sound, so I guess we're doing all right, guys. The word of the day, as I always say, if you're just joining me on this vocabulary building journey, I've changed up the word of the day. We get the word, we get a fun fact, we get how it's used, and its etymology, meaning where it came from. This is brought to you by Merriam-Webster Dictionary, of course. And today's word of the day is spiel. A spiel is a fast speech that someone has often said before and that is usually intended to persuade people to buy something or to agree to something. For example, the founder gave us a long spiel about the benefits of joining the running club. That would never work on me because if it involves running, it does not involve me. But spiel is spelled Spiel. Where it came from, it's well known as a noun. You should also be aware that spiel can be used as a verb, meaning to talk extravagantly. But did you know that the verb can also mean to play music? That, in fact, is the word's original meaning, and it shares with its German root, which is spielen. Spiel is also found in glockenspiel, the name of a musical instrument that is similar to the xylophone. So many people can give spiels. I maybe give some sometimes. Other politicians try to give them. Sports team leaders. Whenever you see in the movies, where they come out and they're like, "We're gonna go out and we're gonna give it 150% on the field." That's a spiel, essentially. Spiels will mostly happen before a big game, like the Super Bowl, the World Cup. Um, or when you're particularly trying to encourage your team or your squad or your unit to produce as much as they can and be the best they can. And the army, for example, had that spiel in the 90s. It was like, be all that you can be in the Army Reserve. That was a marketing campaign, let me tell you. So that was the word of the day, spiel. 10 points to whoever gets to use it today in a sentence, in a regular sentence. The game of the month, I actually kind of pivoted from the battlefields and the warframes of the world to a little indie title called To the Moon. Not to be confused with one of the first games of the month, which was Deliver Us the Moon. This is indie title. Just to explain, indie refers to independent game developers. So not one of your AAA game devs like Activision, Electronic Arts, EA, or other big budget studios like Sony, Microsoft, and such. So this is a story-driven tale about two doctors traversing backwards through a dying man's memories to artificially fulfill his last wish. So the two characters in it are Dr. Rosaline and Dr. Watts, and they give people another chance to live all the way from the very beginning, but only in their heads. Due to the severity of the operation, this new life becomes the last thing that patients remember before drawing their last breath. So it's done only to people on their deathbeds, to fulfill what they wish they had done with their lives but didn't. So this particular story in the game that I literally just booted up yesterday is to their attempt to fulfill the dream of an elderly man, Johnny. So it doesn't really take long to finish indie games. They're usually pretty short, but very impactful. One of another indie game that I played once, and I'll probably talk about it maybe next month because I want to do a replay. Is oh my goodness, what became Edith Finch? What became of Edith Finch? I believe is the full title, and that's also a very impactful game that talks about deals with mental health issues. And I still have to do what my Mac Group 7A kids want, which is actually stream a game while I do the live or in place of the live. So I'm gonna see how I can set that up, and maybe I'll stream Edith Finch or something else for you all. But that's the game of the month. I've had it in my Steam library for quite some time. But I think this time I just wanted to play something a little more relaxing. Will it be relaxing? I have no idea. But I just wanted to try something a little different because I've been on Warframe, which is amazing. I'm very upset with myself that I've never gotten into Warframe before now. But yeah, definitely looking forward to the Moon, and I'll give you guys an update on that when I get far enough. Moving on to general updates, ERP1 and FRLP. I had wanted to do this last time. I had a note, but I didn't think I got a chance to, which is to kind of read the answers that I received from MP Duran to the questions that I received from him regarding ERP1, some components of that. Actually, no, he asked me about FRLP, which was System Laurent. So I'm going to do that first because I think, even though I've given updates before, perhaps it has been missed. So I'm just going to go through some of the questions and the answers that we have already provided to MP Duran and the rest of Parliament on these. I think we sent the answers February 18th. Yep. So the first question that he had asked was the current status of the Sister Marie Laurent School and a realistic timeline for when construction is expected to commence. So the answer that we provided was that the contract was signed on January 19, 2026. The start of works is expected within 6 weeks from the contract signing date, and mobilization efforts have already commenced. As such, works are expected to begin right about now, actually, in the first week of March, subject only, of course, to completion of standard mobilization and pre-construction approval requirements under the contract. The contractor has until the end of March 2027 to complete construction, and a formal handover is supposed to take place 1 month later once all as-built drawings are finalized. And the project team is also working with Foundation Catholic Education St. Martin, so SCOS, on the timing of furnishing the new school to ensure it becomes fully operational in a timely manner. So based on the timeline that we have right now, it's expected that System Marie Laurent will be operational again for the 2027-2028 academic year. And that's something that I have been pushing for since becoming minister. And for all the trust fund projects, actually, to make sure that they are, well managed and well executed. And then the second question was, what specific preparatory activities have been completed since the demolition of the school? What outstanding requirements remain before construction can begin? As I mentioned, the reconstruction contract was already signed. Contractors submitted all required insurances, performance security, work program, environmental and social risk management tools, so the CESMP plan, and a mobilization and traffic management plan. The contractor also initiated the process of applying for the necessary permits to mobilize key personnel to St. Martin. These submissions are part of the contractual pre-construction conditions and are required prior to the commencement of physical work on site. The third question that he asked was, given that the building permit was signed in 2023, are there any regulatory, technical, or procedural matters currently preventing the project from advancing? Nor ECYS nor NRPB were informed of any regulatory, technical, or procedural matters that would prevent the start of construction. From the contract management perspective, the contractor's environmental and social risk management plan, the CESMP, must first be approved by NRPB before works can commence. At the time that we sent these answers, it was under review by NRPB and the supervision consultant. So I will be requesting an update on that this week since, of course, construction was supposed to start this week. Additionally, the contract provides a 6-week period before contract signing and the start of works to allow the contractor to begin procurement of materials and equipment and to mobilize personnel and resources to the site. These are standard contractual mobilization activities and do not constitute project delays or impediments to the project proceeding. Then the MP asked if you can outline the procurement steps taken thus far for the reconstruction of the school, including where the tenders were issued, reissued, or canceled, and the reasons for any such decision. The contract for the SML school was tendered twice. During the first round of bidding, a package of works that included the demolition of the SML School, Charles Leopold Bell, and St. Martin Library was then awarded to a foreign contractor. It was cancelled in March 2025 due to the firm's failure to meet the prerequisites for contract signing, including fulfillment of contractual conditions required prior to execution of the agreement. The scope of works was subsequently split, with demolition tendered separately from reconstruction to avoid further delays. And this is a decision that was made with my input as minister, just for your edification. A St. Martin-based contractor won the demolition tender and has since completed all demolition works at the 3 sites. As you can see, when you drive around, the library is down, Charles Leopold Bell is down, and Sister Marie Laurence. Reconstruction of Sister Marie Laurence was tendered in June 2025. A Trinidadian contractor was the only bidder. The bid was found to be technically and financially acceptable in accordance with the established evaluation criteria. Award was issued in November 2025, and then the contract was signed in January 2026, as was mentioned. The MP then asked, were local contractors given a fair and genuine opportunity to participate in the bidding process for the reconstruction? And if not, what measures are being considered to improve participation? Local contractors were given a fair opportunity to bid. The tender was advertised through local media, including newspapers and the government's website. Pre-bid meetings were held and attended by St. Martin-based contractors who downloaded the bidding documents and expressed interest. Despite extending the bid submission deadline by 2 weeks to allow prospective bidders additional time to prepare submissions, ultimately only one bid was received, which was submitted by a regional contractor. Bid evaluation criteria included points for the inclusion of local labor and the use of local subcontractors, thereby encouraging participation of the local construction sector. Since September 2025, under international competitive bidding procedures, the World Bank has implemented a local labor policy requiring contractors to submit a plan demonstrating that at least 30% of the labor value, where possible, would be allocated to local labor. Additionally, rated criteria for local participation continues to be included in future procurement processes to incentivize bidders to actively engage the local market. Accordingly, local participation remains a formal and continuing component of the procurement framework. He additionally asked, with reference to the previously reported 10% down payment made to foreign contractor and your indication that this contractor is no longer involved, which is kind of funny because we just indicated because it was an answer. Anyway, can you clarify whether the Sister Marie Laurence School formed part of that arrangement and how it affects planning, budgeting, etc.? The previous award for the reconstruction of Sister Marie Laurence was cancelled before the contractor signed the contract. So there's no advance payment made for the construction of this school, and the allocated budget remains intact, and the cancellation has no impact on current project planning, financing, etc. So those were the responses to MP Duran on the Sister Marie Laurence School's reconstruction. And then I think I had another set of questions as well. And I think this was more on the status of public education, but I did talk about that with the transformation of public education. But I did want to read out what I responded to 2 questions. Actually, there were just 3. There were 5 questions total. The first was regarding ICT connectivity and the reliability and availability of internet access across each public school campus. Now, this is actually a question that I asked my predecessor's predecessor while I was in Parliament about digital infrastructure at all of our schools. Of course, we know that Dr. Martin Luther King is experiencing a full loss of internet connectivity following roof repair works that impacted underlying network infrastructure in 2 building blocks, as well as the theft of copper line from Telem. You have that happening quite often. You also see that person stole the external part of the AC units at the offices for NSI at Jose Lake Ballpark. That happens usually because persons are after the copper. It's also why we used to have a lot of dump fires where persons would go and strip out copper out of anything that might have copper in it. So I want everybody to keep that in mind. But this is not something that has happened in the last year. This is something that actually happened over the 2020 to 2024 term. So these are problems that have been existing at our public schools, including Prince William Alexander. Telem is currently implementing a FWA solution in Belvedere, which is a fixed wireless access solution that will resolve Prince William Alexander. And the intention is, of course, to go into the area at Martin Luther King School to address the connectivity challenges there. So while we work to do what maybe should have been done over the last 4 or 5 years, that is going to take some time. infrastructure development when it comes to ICT connectivity, especially with Telem trying to deploy their FWA solution. That's going to require trenching, it's going to require planning, a lot of logistics, and these things do not happen overnight. So that's something that we are actively working to address. Then the MP asked about ongoing staffing challenges within the public education system. Have all public schools completed their staffing requirements with sufficient classroom teachers, subject teachers, etc.? Most classroom teacher positions are filled, but there are always ongoing staffing challenges within public education, and I have to say also within subsidized. Globally, there is a teacher shortage, particularly when you look at specific subject teachers. I cannot for the life of me figure out why many schools struggle to find a physical education teacher. And that is something that I'm not certain if the pool of physical education teachers is shrinking, if there are not that many persons completing that study, and that's for everywhere. So whether you're from St. Martin completing that study or you're, from another island, another country, it just seems to be a area of education that there is a very vast shortage, and that's physical education. And then when you get to Dutch subject teachers, that's also a challenge that we're encountering across the board, and vocational teachers, whether it's in carpentry, electrical, or artistic, you see a challenge with staffing across the board. So that's something that, yeah, at a national, policy level, we can discuss, which is what we responded, which is what I responded to the MP. Um, but ultimately, how do you compete, not just with salaries? And I think a lot of times persons will focus on the salary part of it, but I think too general quality of life, because the salary is one thing, but it doesn't matter where you work if your salary cannot meet the demands of your cost of living. And I hear this complaint as well from teachers in the US, teachers in Canada, teachers in the Netherlands, that as cost of living goes up even in those countries, they also see a challenge now with holding on to their educator resources. But nevertheless, it is something that we have to continue to try to address, and perhaps tie in students going away to study something, and we say, okay, you're going to wait to study this in 6 years time or 5 years time or four. There is a job guaranteed for you, and that has to do with succession planning, and that's something that we're also looking into for public education, because I would prefer that we have succession planning for at least 2-3 years out, that you don't wait until someone is retiring to be able to plan for what happens after that. So, and then, of course, the question about the ministerial decree for persons visiting public school campuses. That's not at all required. I don't even know where that came from, to be honest. This is a policy that has been in place since before my time. It is meant to protect public schools, their state institutions that operate under national policy frameworks, advance notification and centralized approval, ensure proper oversight, safeguard student safety, prevent disruption to instructional time, and maintain alignment with education policy and operational standards. Now, there's also the question of donations. And this is where I think things get tricky, where persons have to understand that there's a line between when you're doing this for goodwill and when you're doing this for the gram. Um, I think, I'm, as someone who has also given in the past, in the right way, following the process with the Ministry of Education, whether it's the public schools, following the process with subsidized schools, because you also can't just waltz in and give something to a subsidized school without checking with their board. I think it's important to note that this ministry, this seat, whether it's me, whether it's my predecessor and from current MP Lewis, whether it's that predecessor, Minister Samuel, etc., this seat is the board. Education. So if there are rules at subsidized school boards, I'm not too certain why persons would assume that there's not rules for public schools and access to public schools, donation rules for public schools, because this is the board. Um, we don't have a fancy acronym. I guess the acronym could be ECYS. I don't know. But if I need to develop a fancy acronym so that it becomes clearer, then I can do that. But basically, there are rules everywhere. And very often, and I've said this before, public education has been used as a political football, and that stops here. These are children at the end of the day. Whether you went through the system or not is not, frankly, the ministry's concern. You can have your alma mater. I also have an alma mater, but I also don't just waltz into that alma mater to do things. And I think that's the point I want to make. So it's more about safety, is more about adhering to national policy frameworks, adhering to general rules and regulations, and whether you are a private citizen, a business person, or a member of parliament, or a fellow minister, those are the rules you have to adhere to. The anti-bullying campaign, for example, that was currently executed by the Ministry of VSA, I have a email correspondence where I said, yes, this is perfectly fine. You can go ahead, and we will inform school managers that this has the ministry and the Division of Public Education's consent. Because again, these are children that we're dealing with, and this is the school board that you have to deal with when it comes to that. So just to, for once and for all, hopefully lay that to bed. I know I'll have to lay it to bed again, actually, on the floor of Parliament. The next time I'm there, and I don't have a problem repeating and clarifying. Anyway, um, the privatization of public education was the second to last question that he asked. That has been explained on my previous stream where we talk about the transformation of public education. It's not privatization, it's transformation. And that is, you can go back and watch my previous live. That was, of course, a calm decision made following a proposal brought by former Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, Ms. Silveria Jacobs. So that was properly explained on how we're trying to streamline public education to make it a bit more efficient. So those are the questions that I had from MP Duran, and then I move into the topic that's on everybody's fingertips, lips, EGRA EGMA. I need a sip of coffee for that. EGRA EGMA is, of course, the early grade reading and early grade mathematics assessments that I shared the results of on the floor of Parliament last week. And yesterday I was on a Super Kid Tupa Dupa morning show to talk about it. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. I'll be on Lady Grace to talk about it because I want to keep the public discourse going, right? The results were very disheartening. And while I saw some commentary that person, we've been knowing this, that may be so. But assessment and helps you establish a benchmark. So while you may know that kids have been struggling, and I would question, what has been done at the lowest level to address that over the years. While you may know that kids have been struggling, now you know where. Now you know how bad. Now you have a benchmark, a baseline with which you can then develop solutions. In regards to the solutions, though, while I acknowledge that there is an urgent need to address these results and to explore solutions to addressing them, urgency does not mean make haste. I think haste makes waste, and that is something that we have struggled with as a country, as an island territory, for decades. It's that the very knee-jerk reaction of, well, this is happening, so let's, we need to buy 1,000 books, and it has to be distributed to all the schools, 100 books a classroom. Sure, that could be a metric. But that doesn't solve the other underlying issues, which is, how do we teach reading? How do we teach literacy? How do we, get kids to be interested in reading? You can't just put the books in there. It's the same concept as you lead a horse to water, but you can't make a horse drink. You need to make sure that the horse is aware that they need to drink, that you actually stoke that thirst, because you could drag the horse to water, but does the horse know that it's thirsty? And I think that is a combination of efforts from the ministry, efforts from parents, and efforts from teachers. At the end of the day, these are kids, especially with the EGRA EGMA. These are first graders and third graders. It is their first time on this planet, and they cannot learn if we are not willing to teach. And if we are not willing to teach, I always think teaching is a calling, whether you're as a parent or as an educator formally. Then this is not the realm for you, And I think that's something that most people don't want to say out loud, but I'll say it out loud. Because in the midst of all the EGRA EGMA, what I was also treated to last week was a conversation with Mr. Shaka Singhor. He is a author, a New York Times bestseller. I'm sure this is the book, How to Be Free. He's a former client of the industrial complex. He spent time in a maximum security prison. He spent 7 years in solitary confinement. And that conversation with him and the CAFE students at USM was very insightful, very inspirational. The questions as well from the CAFE students, them because those questions were very on nose, very deep in certain instances. And he spoke very candidly about his time in prison. And what I truly appreciated is his consistent reinforcement of the fact that being literate helped pull himself out of the darkness of help him pull himself actually out of the darkness of incarceration. He wrote his first two books while in solitary confinement. I think too is something that I asked a question to him about that, in this day and age of persons saying that AI is going to help people read. So, they won't even need the foundational skill of reading. Um, I find that a little ludicrous because AI also thinks that strawberry only has, two R's in it. But yeah, Mr. Senghor spoke about, that time and how writing those two books, being able to write to journal. He spoke about how journaling helped him organize his thoughts, how it helped him organize his feelings, manage his own emotions. And at the end of it, he and I kind of agreed on the point of we need to find ways to make being literate cool again, because it hasn't been cool for a very long time. And I can't help but to continue to echo this sentiment, and I think for me, and I'll probably repeat this the next time I go to Parliament as well. One of the biggest critiques that we, and I've said it before, we as a party received when we first started or first launched was, you guys are too educated. Um, I'm constantly told that I speak too lofty, for the regular person, and I say, well, actually, no. I think that it's our job to uplift people and bring them to our level. What we see on St. Martin is very much by design. Things have been kept as they are because an uninformed, illiterate population is a population that will do anything, will vote for anybody, and will vote for anything. And I think that that's where we see this disconnect. And if the adults are behaving like that, I don't know why anyone is surprised at what we see right now in these EGMA results. So it's going to take all of us. And if you are willing to see change happen, then you will put your money where your mouth is, you'll put your body where your mouth is, and you'll actually work with the ministry to make it happen. You'll work with parents, you'll encourage parents, you'll hold each other accountable, you'll hold educators accountable for the state of affairs when it comes to these particular results. So just a bit on that, uh, on those results. I know it was disheartening, and I think when we prepare to put forward the uh, results of the FBE review, that combined with the EGMA is going to give us a very clear picture of where the responsibility is going to have to lie with um, you know uh, how we address it and how we make it better. So the 2027, I'm not saying that the results for that assessment next year are going to be fantastic, but if we start taking small steps right now, I do believe that we can see an improvement by then. And then that will just give us further benchmarks because that's going to include Group 7. It's also, to my hope, going to include the private schools. And then we will be able to go even further and say, okay, now we've ticked the benchmark this direction. Let's continue, and let's continue to build on that, because expecting instant gratification is why nothing actually gets fixed. Everything needs to be built up. The solution can start here, and then 2 years from now, maybe we'll be here. 2 years from then, we'll be here. You're not gonna see a jump. Kids are not going to go from not being able to recognize numbers and letters to being Toni Morrison and Albert Einstein. It's not going to work out like that. So we just have to admit that and work together to take the small steps necessary to make it at least marginally better. And that marginal increases and marginal improvements are what you're looking for. Um, but yeah, looking forward to everyone putting their wheel to the shoulder to make it happen. The shoulder to the wheel. Wow, guys, I haven't drank the whole cup of coffee yet, so bear with me. Moving on to sports. Yesterday, I went to look at the multipurpose court at Raul Illich Sports Complex, RISC, where the director of NSI, YISC, provided myself and my policy advisor, Marvin Cook, with a comprehensive update of where we're at. I must say, I'm no engineer, but the pouring job over there, magnificent. Not nearly a crack in that concrete. The container with the fencing, the surfacing, etc., is going to arrive this month, and then that should be installed following the curing of the concrete. We hope to see the HVAC project at LB Scott Sports Auditorium kick off within the next 2 weeks. That's what I've been told. I'm going to get an update today, hopefully, and then we shall see. But it's my goal to have that done before Carnival. And then on the culture side, just a big shout out to the organizations who had their projects approved for funding, from the social initiatives Transatlantic Slavery Past for the Caribbean part of the kingdom, that fund from the Netherlands. St. Martin had the most approvals. This is quite remarkable, as well as a testament to the notion of steady work makes the dream work. Um, Capacity building following Hurricane Irma to strengthen the administrative and grant writing competencies of NGOs and nonprofits has resulted in these fruits. And I'm very proud of all of them. I'm very privileged as well to have been invited to witness the laying of the foundation of those workshops, first as a private citizen, then as a member of parliament, and to see now where we are, you know, it's honestly incredible. And I think it goes back to what I said about the literacy results, about everything in Samat. You know, instant gratification is not going to get you there. It's steady work. I mean, those workshops may have been tedious, they may have been tiring, but they paid off. And now we see where we're at, with, you know, us having the most approvals for projects under that particular fund. And just a shout out to all of them and the hard work that they've done and that they continue to do. That is actually all the updates I have for today. Next week, you know, we'll hopefully have quite a few more, especially on the side of Sister Marie Laurence and the reconstruction and the progress as well for Charles Leopold Bell and the St. Martin Library. So thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to go prep myself now for calm, and I wish everybody a pleasant rest of